Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to take some time and talk about what's going on at the border, about the inhumane treatment that women and children are experiencing at the border, at the hands of Border Patrol, at the hands of the guards, of people that are supposed to be there to protect them or to help them. Obviously, that's not what's happening. And so I've been paying attention at how people are reacting, the discussion that are happening over in social media or the news. In fact, a lot of people are not talking about it, as they're just ignoring it. And when people are confronted with the facts, they often deny them, right? And that is true of a lot of injustices that are happening in our country. And so what I see is that too many people in this country believe that this is the greatest country on earth, right? There's a strong sense of patriotism, and they don't believe that this country ever does anything wrong. Too many people, most of them Trump voters, right, do not believe us when we tell them about the horrific abuse that is happening to children and families. Like I said, at the border, too many people refuse to believe that families are being separated by our government, that some of them are put in horrible conditions, detained in horrible conditions. They don't believe us when we tell them that thousands of children, of immigrant children, have been sexually abused by those people that are supposed to protect them inside of these facilities or in the homes where they're placed. Their children are being drugged against their will. There's been a lot of reports of children who, in the name of treating their anxiety or depression or their rowdiness, that they're being given drugs as opposed to just keeping them with their families. And we all seen those horrible videos of children trying, presenting themselves in immigration court, and there you have a 5-year old, in front of a judge by himself, and it's very heartbreaking, right? What's happening with these children, and most recently, that women are being sterilized without their consent. There seems to be a lot of experimentation going on, um, and even women being forced to give birth next to garbage cans and very unsanitary conditions, right? And people are surprised that this is happening, or like I said, they just don't accept it. Uh, and I guess what can we expect? We hear this in the media. We hear this from the president. Elected officials talk about immigrants as animals, as threats, as low lives, as in all these horrible ways. And so when people hear about this, they either deny it or think that maybe they deserve it. Maybe they're not human like us, and they deserve it. So too many people, like I said, don't believe us, or refuse to believe us because it doesn't fit. You know what I'm thinking? Why don't they believe us? I think it's because it doesn't fit their narrative or their idea that they have about the United States. This narrative that they've been fed all their lives about American exceptionalism, about the greatness of the United States, and it's very kind of Eurocentric, of course, very anti-immigrant. And we hear this in Fox News, conservative talk shows, and again, this notion that we are the greatest nation chosen by God to lead the world, right? And we justify our interventions around the world, many of which are in Latin America, right? We have overthrown presidents in Latin America, democratically elected presidents in Latin America, and somehow we say, oh, we are so good, then it cannot be wrong what we're doing in those places. And so many people again believe that the United States is a land where dreams come true for everybody, right? They watch too many Hollywood movies where all you have to do is work hard and you get what you want. And obviously, we have too many people working hard. I mean, a lot of working class people working one, two, three jobs and not necessarily achieving that dream, right? And so a lot of these people don't realize that this is also the land where so many good dreams have died, that this is also the land where we too often kill the dream and the dreamer because the dreamer is not white. We continue to still not validate the lives of black and brown indigenous people. They're still not recognized and held to the same standard as has European Americans have been held, historically. And by the way, the President Trump just created a new initiative, right? He's allocating money for this plan to strengthen what he calls patriotic educations in schools. So patriotic education. And this patriotic education would be designed to combat what Trump calls left-wing propaganda, right? He thinks that educators are radicalizing the youth and teaching them to be anti-American, right? This is kind of what we hear. And the goal is for children to grow up to be fervent nationalists who take any critique of this country, of its history, or of its leaders as disloyalty or even as treason, and those who criticize the nation or want to change it, us and people that are in the streets and organizing with their communities are seen as the enemy, right? And this is actually what the U.S. Attorney General wants to do with protesters, with Black Lives Matters activists. He wants to charge them with sedition, with treason, so that we would be afraid and stay quiet, right? Black, indigenous, and people of color in general are very familiar with the dangers and violence of U.S. nationalism in this country and around the world. We're very familiar with how this unchecked nationalism can so often lead to violence against people who are seen as less American or as less deserving to be in this country. And so please believe me when I tell you that Trump is a fascist. Is a fascist in many ways. And that for us, being an anti-fascist at this moment is our historical responsibility, right? Who is afraid of being anti-fascist except those that want to be fascists, right, or support fascists? So we got to be very careful about the way that protesters are being portrayed in the media by these by Trump and his people. So when I think about people that don't believe what's happening, right, at the border, what's happening in the streets, and I think about how these MAGA wearing people who don't believe us, who don't believe what they see, even with their own eyes, right? We have videos showing what happened. They still don't believe what they see, who don't really care about our pain. When we show them our scars, they deny that even took place. And rather than believe us, they rather believe in conspiracy theories of secret groups of Democrats. So you see that in the news of the elite Democrats who are buying and selling children, even eating them. All these crazy things that cannot be proven, right? So rather than believe something that we are seeing with our eyes, right, that we see in the streets, that there's reports of credible sources, they rather believe in something that they cannot see or prove. And they hold on to conspiracy theories, but then choose to do nothing. These people that claim to care so much about children, and they choose to do nothing about the children being abused at the border. Do nothing when a black or brown child loses a parent at the hands of the police. They do nothing when black and brown children are being poisoned by the water they drink. And we can think about Flint, Michigan, for example. And the air they breathe. We live in a very toxic space. Fires, not only fires, but obviously refineries and people of color tend to live in areas where there's a lot of pollution, right? And so these people that claim to care so much about children, they then do nothing, right? When they see the news headlines reporting that the coronavirus kills more Latino and Black children, disproportionate numbers, right? We've been seeing that the majority of them, of children that have died because of coronavirus, are children of color. And so instead of believe us and what they can see, these same people rather believe that Trump is saving us from some shadow government run by cloak wearing Democrats. But we know who the real enemy to justice and life everywhere is. We know that Trump and this racist capitalist system, right, that feeds on our bodies and our dreams. That's what we need to fight. And like I said, Trump and people like him don't want us to learn our history. They don't want us to learn about the long history of inhumane treatment that immigrants have endured at the border for over a century. This is not new. This is not new. They don't want us to learn about how this country, starting in 1917, began forcing immigrants at the U.S.-Mexico border to strip nude and then have border officials spray them with pesticides, spray them with gasoline and other dangerous chemicals. They did that. People crossing the border. They did that with the Bracero program that imported more than almost 5 million guest workers. The men they were sprayed at the border, treated very, very inhumanely. So Trump doesn't want us to learn about this inhumane treatment of immigrants and how it continues all the way to the present. Instead, he would rather have us believe that these immigrants fleeing persecution, fleeing violence and poverty are our enemies, right? And he would rather not have you learn about how the United States have played a big role in creating the conditions that are forcing so many people to flee their countries. There's a reason why these people come here. There's a reason why they come to a land where they're not wanted for the most part, where they will be discriminated, where they will be imprisoned, right? People don't just leave their families, what they know, their culture, to go to a dangerous or unwelcoming place, right? There's a reason why they're coming. They're forced to come. And Trump and people like him do not want our minds, really. They don't want our dreams. They only want our bodies for disposable labor. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is open your eyes and see who works in the most dangerous conditions, who is forced to work in the middle of a pandemic without adequate protection, and who's working when the air is so dirty that you can't even see the sun and the smoke burns your eyes and throat, right? You've seen the pictures of farm workers working right next to the fires. The sun is all blocked out, but they're still there working so that we can have food, right? And so one last point, again, this racist, oppressive, capitalist system thrives in our division, right? And so when someone like me points an injustice, it's not to create further division, right? It's to invite people to think about it and to think about how we can become allies and collaborators and accomplices in this fight to end this oppression, right? And together we really do have a lot of strength, and we can overcome our divisions and distrust, and we've done it before, right? So again, let's continue to show up for each other, to speak up for each other, and to fight for each other.